This is Monty in the Morning, the show Phoenix Magazine readers voted #1 talk radio show in Arizona.
#1 during your morning commute.
#1 whenever news breaks during your day.
And #1 whenever and wherever you want to talk sports.
Now it's time for Monty in the Morning.
Hey, yo, man, how the heck are you? It is the Monty Show. Happy Tuesday, the 5th of July. Good to see everybody already commenting. Good to have you on the program. A lot to get to today. The Utah Jazz continue to be in the middle of the trade machine. We'll have all the latest details for you. This Kevin Durant situation looks like it is going to jump off here in the next couple of days. We have the very latest in how are the Utah Jazz involved in the Kevin Durant trade. Let me ask you this. Yesterday for the 4th of July barbecue, was it a smoker or a barbecue? Like, charcoal briquettes and stuff.
Open flames and stuff.
We'll talk about that. What did you eat yesterday? We've got to talk about 4-day work weeks. That excites me. Just hearing the words 4-day work week.
Yeah, well, it's National Workaholic Day apparently today, so.
We qualify.
Yeah.
I'm serious. I think we qualify as
we absolutely do.
Complete and total workaholics.
Yeah.
All right, so all of that coming up. Make sure that you give us a thumbs up and a like right now if you are here on the show. We greatly appreciate that. It helps this show grow. It helps us do our job better for you, friends, because that's what we're all here for, to make sure that you're taken care of. Okay, let's talk Utah Jazz basketball. On the Monty Show. I don't know. I'm just being sarcastic as usual. But over the weekend, we were following the Jazz situation very closely here on the Monty Show. And very clearly, the Utah Jazz, Jake, continue to work behind the scenes to add a big man. That is clearly their priority, if you will. Very, very much, in my opinion, as it should be, because this team, with the trade of Rudy Gobert, got a lot smaller in the middle. I don't think there's any doubt about that. You have to find a way to backstock that. But, Jake, right now, if I had to ask you, if I had to pin you down right now, would you say the Jazz are rebuilding or are the Utah Jazz retooling?
Yeah, my opinion is that they're retooling. I think that their behavior and their actions have told us this, and that what I'm referencing is the way they've gone about this process. They took their time finding Will Hardy, the next head coach of the Utah Jazz. Obviously, they've taken their time in trading Rudy Gobert, from this team, obviously, to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I feel like that deal was very beneficial for the Utah Jazz. I feel like they got a haul of picks, good players that they can then flip, and a couple that I would recommend that they keep. But I think the reason they're retooling instead of rebuilding is because if you were going to enter a full rebuild, you would have traded Donovan Mitchell. You would be trying to move on from him. You would be trying to change and redefine this entire organization. And I don't think that's what's happening here. I think if you've watched this team for the last 2 years, you know that this team went through some struggles in the locker room this past season. You know that it's been a fight for Donovan Mitchell to really get to the level that we all expect him to get to. There have been some injuries and some things have gotten in the way. And so I think, when we try to define retool or rebuild, I just think a rebuild is just not what we're seeing, because a rebuild would be tearing the whole thing down, shipping everybody out, trying to be the Oklahoma City Thunder as an example, or the Orlando Magic, where you're trying to get to that top, 3 in the NBA draft. And that's not what the Utah Jazz have done here. But I think what they have done is they've said, all right, the team that we have was good. It was, competent to a certain level, but we haven't been able to get to the Western Conference Finals. We haven't been able to, contend at the level we want to contend at. So how do we change that? Where does that process start? Well, that process started with trading Rudy Gobert. So now that that's done, now the information we have is that they are involved in the Kevin Durant situation as a third team to sort of facilitate Brooklyn and Phoenix doing a deal. So that's why I say this isn't a full-on tear it down, burn it down rebuild. This, to me, is a retool where you're just reshaping the team around your best player in Donovan Mitchell, and you're hoping and, not really hoping, counting on the fact that Donovan Mitchell comes back as a complete player, and the guys you put around him enable him to be in positions to carry your team in the biggest moments.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that is very clear is that the Utah Jazz are chasing DeAndre Ayton and John Collins. Sources last night around the NBA, told me that the Jazz were very close on a John Collins trade with the Atlanta Hawks before this Kevin Durant thing jumped off last week. And John Collins obviously is a guy that's a good fit, but I think the question you have to ask yourself is DeAndre Ayton a better fit, or is John Collins a better fit? And I'm here to tell you it's DeAndre Ayton, and I don't know that it's close. DeAndre Ayton brings you size at 6'11". He brings you an offensive skill set that is superior to what you had with Rudy Gobert or what John Collins brings you. Now, are you getting the defender that John Collins is? Certainly not. But I think what DeAndre Ayton lacks defensively, you can make up for with his offensive production. And I would tell you that what the Jazz need is a big who can shoot a jump shot. And there is no doubt in my mind that DeAndre Ayton fills that bill. I do wish DeAndre was meaner. I wish he was tougher. I wish he wanted to end dudes, but he doesn't. But DeAndre Ayton's a guy that can give you 20 and 10, 20 and 12 on a night in, night out basis, and he can do that in multiple ways. He can play at 3 different levels, Jake. I love DeAndre Ayton, and that's the guy that I would choose. If I were the Utah Jazz, I'd take DeAndre Ayton over John Collins.
Yeah, and I think you can't teach size, and that's the only thing to me that he really definitively has over John Collins. I think that their games are just completely different, meaning that John Collins, to me, is a more explosive player. He's somebody that you will find posterizing guys multiple times a season. He does have a three-point shot in his bag, but he doesn't have that polished mid-range elbow jumper that DeAndre Ayton has that enables you to really get layered in the pick and roll game, meaning that it gives Don options essentially based on what the defense is running, whether to give it to DeAndre Ayton to knock down the elbow or to take it to the hole, and that's what I think ultimately this retool needs to be defined as. Like, if you're a Utah Jazz fan and you're sitting here saying, okay, what is this team trying to do? Because they just traded away one of our best players that we had last season. Maybe I don't know the guys that we got back from Minnesota. So what really are we trying to do? And I would tell you what the Utah Jazz are trying to do is put Donovan Mitchell in positions to be successful by bringing in guys that give him space and give him options to operate, which is what he didn't have the last couple of seasons. So when I look at Ayton and I look at Collins, I would agree that Ayton probably is the better fit. He has the size. He trends a little bit more traditional big man without being, lumbering and limited from a speed standpoint. And I just think that DeAndre Ayton can do a lot for you. That said, if they went and got John Collins, I would not be sitting here criticizing that move because I think John Collins is incredibly capable within his game. So I wouldn't criticize that at all.
No, I'd agree with that. I mean, John Collins or DeAndre Ayton are both going to be upgrades for you. But I think when you look at what you have to do here to compete, I think DeAndre Ayton certainly makes that happen. But of course, and again, the question is, are the Utah Jazz trading Donovan Mitchell? And I think this is the number one question that we keep hearing. And it's mainly because you have people in Phoenix and Brooklyn talking about how the Nets are trying to get Donovan Mitchell to team him with Ben Simmons. And I would again say that by rule is not allowed in the NBA because you can't have 2 rookie contracts that have been extended. So when you look at the max deal that Ben Simmons is on, they traded for him. So you could have 2 of your own rookies that you've given max extensions to or designated rookies on your roster,
right?
But you can't trade for 2 of them. And Ben Simmons obviously was acquired by trade by Brooklyn, and they would be acquiring Donovan Mitchell by trade to have that second one. Now, by some miracle, is there a scenario where you can see that the Brooklyn Nets offload Ben Simmons? I think that's awfully difficult to have Ben Simmons end up on the Phoenix Suns. I think that's asking an awful lot out of Phoenix. They want Kevin Durant.
Right.
Kevin Durant wants the Phoenix Suns. I think it's awfully difficult to go to the Utah Jazz and make the case that, hey, give us Donovan Mitchell, we'll give you Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons hasn't played in more than a calendar year. He's coming off of a significant back injury, and he is dealing with mental health issues that are unclear and undefined. So while it is possible, I don't see it at all likely that Ben Simmons and Donovan Mitchell end up on the Brooklyn Nets. And, oh, by the way, the Jazz, according to Utah Jazz sources, have turned down everybody who have called about Donovan Mitchell, from the Miami Heat to the Charlotte Hornets to the New York Knicks repeatedly. I mean, they have over a dozen calls now asking about the availability of Donovan Mitchell, and at every turn, the Utah Jazz have told teams Donovan Mitchell is not available. We are not trading him. Don is not asked to be traded, which I think is the only way that the Utah Jazz would even consider a Donovan Mitchell deal. At least that's what I've been told directly by people at the Jazz. So I would be really surprised if Donovan Mitchell was involved in this deal. I would not be surprised if the Utah Jazz were involved in a Kevin Durant trade. If they were a third team in a Kevin Durant trade where, hey, they would absorb Deandre Ayton, they give up Mike Conley in a draft pick, or Bojan Bogdanovic and Mike Conley in a draft pick, or 2 draft picks to end up with Deandre Ayton and another pick swap, whatever that might be. I absolutely could see that scenario, and I actually think that's likely. I do, however, think that this is 100% in control of the Brooklyn Nets, because the Brooklyn Nets, as we told you yesterday, according to NBA sources who told me directly, the Brooklyn Nets have trade packages that they could execute right now today.
Right.
They could trade Kevin Durant to Phoenix for a package that includes Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson and multiple picks. This is why the onus is on the Phoenix Suns to get a DeAndre Ayton deal done so that they could acquire 2 more first-round picks, which I think is what it would take to get DeAndre Ayton out of Phoenix to Utah, because Phoenix needs more draft assets to execute a Kevin Durant trade. So I think it makes sense that the Jazz are involved in that deal. I do not think it makes sense that they would be sending Donovan Mitchell on to Brooklyn.
No, and I think that was the greatness of the Rudy Gobert trade. If you're the Utah Jazz, you picked up all of those first-round picks, and I think that is why I was so excited about the Rudy Gobert trade for the Utah Jazz, because I felt like, okay, yeah, you got some talent in return, but what you really did is you offloaded a bunch of money and you got a bunch of picks back that you can then go and get involved in another thing, which is what we told you when we did that, emergency show, right, when that trade went down. So that's why I say it doesn't make sense that the Utah Jazz are trading Donovan Mitchell to Brooklyn. What makes sense both by rule and just structure, what makes sense is that the Jazz have all these picks to offer. So why would you not ship those out? Because the Utah Jazz clearly need a big. They've got the picks. They've got the players that they can send. There's no reason that it doesn't work. And so I think I agree with you. The only thing holding this thing up is that the Brooklyn Nets are trying to get the absolute tippy top trade value for Kevin Durant, because I can't blame them. When's the next time you're going to get to trade Kevin Durant?
Well, you better hope never.
Yeah.
I mean, you better, seriously, I know I say this a lot, but how many times do you want to be in a situation where you're trying to trade a guy the caliber of Kevin Durant?
How many times do you want to be in a situation where you're trying to trade Donovan Mitchell? You don't want to be in that position.
You're not. How many times do you want to talk about rebuild versus reload? You don't.
Yeah.
Josh Martin sends us a $2 tip this morning. Josh, appreciate you very much. Asking any news on Ayton to Utah. Well, we just gave it to you. Appreciate that. What's up, my guy? Jeremy Bolton saying they gave out another PS5. I want it. They said they were going to ship it to me today. Well, Jeremy.
Your games are.
Jeremy.
It's too early for your games, Jeremy.
Unless your name is Gabe Ledley, you didn't win a PS5.
Yeah.
Neville93, what's up with you? He says, good morning, lads. I didn't have a chance to hear the show yesterday. My bad. How dare you? How dare you?
Come on.
How dare you?
Got to be committed. It's every day.
Every day. Be committed. It's National Workaholic Day.
Yeah.
Get it done.
Come on.
Jake R says, good morning. You guys still are killing it. Thank you. Appreciate that. Brandon Butler, what's up, my friend? Jerry Reinsdorf bought the Arlington Bears and put Jerry Krause in charge.
The Arlington Bears.
The Arlington Heights Chicago Bears.
Wow.
Don't get me started. Jordan Nelson, good morning. What is next move for the Jazz? Are we all just in wait-and-see game thanks to Katie and Kyrie? I think the NBA is in a wait-and-see mode.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
I think that Kevin Durant, again, this is just a lot of my opinion based on things I've been told. I can't see Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving getting traded in the same deal. I don't think that happens. And when I say in the same deal, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to the Suns, because I truly believe Kevin Durant's going to end up in Phoenix. I can't see Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving ending up on the same team. I can see a 4-team deal. Hey, we're going to send Kyrie Irving to the Lakers. We're going to send Kevin Durant to the Suns. And we're going to send Deandre Ayton to Utah and here and there. And I could see that. But the moving parts in that deal are just astronomical. The trade that I think makes more sense is, hey, isolated deals. DeAndre Ayton to Utah for draft picks and Bogdanovich.
Yeah.
I could see Kyrie to the Lakers for Westbrook, who they negotiate a buyout with. Westbrook becomes a free agent. I can see stuff like that happening. These 4 or 5 team deals that are being thrown around like they happen every day in the NBA.
Yeah.
How often do you see 4 or 5 team deals in the NBA?
Rarely.
Very rarely.
Yeah.
Very rarely.
Well, and I think if you're the Brooklyn Nets, you're trying to maximize every deal within the 5-team deal. Because
Yes.
again, like we were just saying, not to be repetitive, but how often are you going to get the chance to get? I mean, I'm not even exaggerating. How often are you going to get the chance to get 10 first-round picks out of this whole situation between Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and from all these different teams? Would anyone be surprised if they got 7 to 10 first-round picks out of this whole thing? I'm not even exaggerating, not joking.
I would not.
That's what we're talking about.
I mean, that's the level of deal we're talking about. D's World of Hoops says, big question, is Donovan Mitchell a number 1 option to primarily build around for championship aspirations? I'm not convinced. I don't think anybody knows the absolute answer there. What I see in Donovan Mitchell, D's World, and why I think that he is a number 1 option, he plays at 3 levels. He can play at the rim, he can play in the mid-range, and he certainly can shoot a 3. The biggest question is, what is Donovan Mitchell going to bring to training camp that we haven't seen in the past? Is he going to be a better, more capable, more willing defender? Because that's the major hurdle. Don can play in the mid-range already. He needs to refine that and grow that part of his game. But if Donovan Mitchell's not going to improve defensively, he's never going to reach his max potential. Mm-hmm. He's not. He is going to be a limited player, and the Jazz are eventually going to collapse under the weight of his inability to defend. My guess is that Donovan Mitchell realizes, oh my goodness, they traded Rudy Gobert. Now it's up to me. I think that's truly where Donovan Mitchell is. I think Don is at a tipping point where this franchise is now being built around him. He's got to produce.
Facts.
And the point is, Kevin Durant is a guy that's a number 1 option. He defends well. He clearly, I think he's the best offensive player in basketball. There's no doubt about that. Donovan Mitchell's not that guy. He, in my opinion, has the talent. He has the ability. He has the capability to be that guy, but he ain't that guy right now. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason he's not is because he's not a wanting and willing defender. Now, is that because the system said feed everything to Rudy? Could be. A lot of guys have said their number 1 defensive tool was, okay, let him go because Rudy's protecting the rim. Now that Rudy's gone, does that mean that Don becomes a better, more willing defender? I don't know. We'll find out.
Right.
But I know he can do it. It's not a question of can he do it. It is a question of will he do it.
Well, and I think the only other thing that I would be concerned about is the leadership side. I think that's one of the bigger things here is that, hey, we moved on from Rudy Gobert. We're remaking this roster. That's going to require Donovan Mitchell to be a leader off the court, too, to make it all work. And so I think that also, not that I doubt that he can do it, but, it's just one of those things where until someone does it, you don't know. But to answer your question directly, I do think he can be the best player on a championship team. I just think he needs more space to operate and better contributors.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Alex Chacon says, good morning, fellas. Another day of waiting for the Ayton has been traded to the Utah Jazz. Woj mom. Exactly.
Yeah, man.
Good morning to Rudy Sanchez, Ryan Buckley. Good morning to you. 1 round left. Good morning, too. He says, Ayton comes to Utah. He will put up monster numbers. Him and Don have super duo potential. I agree.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. By the way, I think the free-flowing style that DeAndre Ayton showed us in Phoenix also plays really well in Utah. I think in the system that most of us believe Will Hardy is going to craft, they're going to play wide-open basketball.
Which they should, man.
Well, that's what the game dictates now.
Yeah.
This half-court, sometimes play an offensive set, sometimes shoot a three isn't what's going to win you a championship. You have to be more free than that. You have to be, what's the word, whimsical. You have to be able to run, play in transition, play defense, and
in
shoot
the flow
the three
of the
ball.
game. In the flow of the game, like you have to. The way I always describe it is you have to play in the flow of the game within the structure of your team. Like obviously you have to know your limitations, as the old saying goes, right? Like every man's got to know his limitations. Well, every starting five has to know their limitations and how to play within the flow of the game to have success.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is that you have to understand that when you look at John Collins versus Deandre Ayton, that's why I say I think it's very clear that Deandre Ayton's the better option here. This is a trade where, I feel like the Jazz have to get this done.
Yeah.
Danny's got to execute and get this Deandre Ayton deal done. If they're able to acquire Deandre Ayton, I mean, that is a huge jump into the timeline of winning a championship.
Yes.
Because right now you're retooling. If you trade Donovan Mitchell, which again, the Jazz have told me repeatedly, they're not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
If they were to trade Donovan Mitchell, you're not retooling, you're rebuilding. If you trade for DeAndre Ayton to put him next to Donovan Mitchell, now you are retooled. And it's a huge difference in philosophy.
Yep.
John Collins is a guy that's a work in progress. I think DeAndre Ayton, his growth has to be on defense. You like what he does offensively because, again, he can shoot the spot-up jumper, the catch-and-shoot, the push jumper. He can dunk. He's a good rebounder. You need him to be better and more intense on defense. I think John Collins is a guy that's far less able offensively. I think he's a guy that's far more versatile defensively. I'll take Ayton every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know. Honest to goodness, I don't know that it's that close.
Well, and the NBA Finals experience. I mean, we can't forget that.
And I think that's huge.
Yeah.
I think the as much as the ending has been ugly for DeAndre Ayton in Phoenix,
mm-hmm.
his exposure to Monty Williams, his exposure to CP3, his ability to describe and share what he felt in the finals, I think is significant. And one of the things I think this Utah Jazz team has really lacked is anybody that's ever been there and done what they're trying to do now.
Agreed.
And so you look at DeAndre Ayton, he didn't win, obviously, and he was a big reason they didn't win. But he and Will Hardy have both been there now.
Yes.
They both have that experience of that path, that pressure, what that weight feels like sitting on your chest when you're trying to win a championship. And to me, I think that is something that's been sorely lacking in this organization. So, yeah, I actually feel like this is a situation where DeAndre Ayton is the far better option.
Well, and if you get DeAndre Ayton, then I think we have to say, hey, like this, like if they do the Ayton deal and let's say they do nothing else, then I think the offseason's been an A+. Coaching hire, changing the roster. Like if you don't get Ayton and you do some smaller trades, then I think we're probably in like B-ish area, 80% of like what you could have done. So but I do think they're aggressively pursuing Ayton, no doubt.
Yep, I agree. Spencer Morgan, good morning, my friend. He says, all the action so far indicates rebuild. Really? To think they are retooling requires belief in trades and signings that have not yet happened between now and the start of the season. If you look at the roster and draft capital as it stands right now, it's a rebuild. Retool may be what's going on, but we need to see some evidence of it. That's exactly right.
You're right. I mean, if they just sit here, if they just sit on their hands and do nothing and just keep the picks, then yeah, I mean,
where they
agree.
are today.
Yeah, I mean, if you just sit where you are right now today, then yeah, I have to agree it is a rebuild. But I know, like I think we can say on this show, like with the information we have, I mean, I would feel confident saying it's like 99.9% done that more moves are coming. I just don't think that there's no point in doing the Minnesota Rudy deal in valuing getting all those picks back if you weren't going to do something with those. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense from a basketball perspective.
No, I agree. Josh Martin gives us a $5 tip. That's $7
Thank
today,
you.
man. Appreciate you. By the way, you can send us a tip as well if you like. You certainly don't have to. There's a $ below in the comment box. Just click on that. It'll allow you to execute. If we get Ayton, do you think we'll make more trades, upgrade at point guard? I think my guess is there's 2 more deals coming. I think there is one more blockbuster trade coming. I think, and then there are some sculpting deals coming. Like I mean, when you give yourself a significant haircut, it's not just a pull out the clipper, let's do this.
Yeah.
You got to style it. You got to pull out the
How much
groomer.
you want on top? Skin fade on the side.
Yeah, what are we doing? A 2 on the side or a 3?
Yeah.
You are what you are.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. But yeah, Josh, I don't think you're off base there. I do think you have to do more. I think Jared Butler becomes an incredibly important figure in this conversation.
Hey, Summer League starting tonight, I believe it is.
Yeah.
Is that tomorrow? Is
Today.
it tonight? Yeah, it's like
Today.
tonight. Yeah, so like watch if you have time or record it or whatever, watch the Summer League because he will get run in the Summer League.
Yeah. D's World of Hoops says, and also Spencer, why would Mitchell waste years in a product that's playing first round bound? It would be smart for both sides to part ways. Well, I think if you're completely tearing this thing down to rebuild it, you're probably trading Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
But again, I would go back to what our sources have told us almost from day one, which is that the Utah Jazz have told Donovan Mitchell, we will spare no expense. We will build around you. We will get talent here. We will have assets and resources here to bring us to a level where we can compete for a championship as soon as possible. And I think if you're the Jazz, right now what you've done is put yourself in a position to fulfill that promise you made to Donovan Mitchell, which is we're going to get assets here to give you a chance to compete. Because right now they're a first-round play-in team. That's where they are. They're a 7, 8, 9, 10. Mm-hmm. That's who they are by this roster. If you go and get a Deandre Ayton, now you're 6 through 4, 5, 6 in the West. You change the point guard, you upgrade, you bring some signings. Now you can compete towards the top of this conference, and it didn't take you 5 years to do that. So my guess is they're going to make one more significant trade that I think, if you had to ask me right now, I would think it would be Deandre Ayton. But a lot of that trade's going to depend on Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
I think that they'll make that deal. And then my guess is they'd like to hold on to Bojan Bogdanović, and they'd like to upgrade their starting point guard. Because I think everybody in this organization agrees Don's better off the ball. When you have a true point guard that handles the ball, brings it up, that's why I could see a guy like a campaign being thrown into that Ayton deal. Like we talked about this the other day as well. I don't necessarily believe it just has to be DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you're able to get the Torrey Craigs of the world, if you're able to take some role players and you're able to, to get a Joe Harris from Brooklyn in a 3-team deal, if you're able to land those kinds of assets, if you're in a 3-team deal with the Suns, the Nets, and the Jazz, I mean, both of those teams have pieces that you would want. I mean, Certainly guys like Harris that you're hearing they want to move, Joe's going to come at a little bit of a price, but that's also one of the truly elite 3-point shooters in the Eastern Conference when he's healthy.
Yeah.
But you need pieces like that. You need
more quality. You
need to upgrade around the perimeter. And you need to build depth into this team because, again, the other thing you got to remember is, Hernan Gomez is gone, Pascal's gone, Forrest is gone. Those are 3 rotational players that you used heavily last year. So now what happens to Nickeil Alexander-Walker? What happens to Jared Butler? What happens to guys that they're going to bring in? Because this roster is going to look completely different. And, again, the other guy that I always bring up that nobody's talking about is Rudy Gay. He has multiple years left on his contract. What are you doing with Rudy Gay? Because I think he's a guy that, while I don't think there's tremendous value there, I think there is value there. I think there is value there.
Absolutely.
BB says Donovan's going nowhere. We'll see about that. Lorenzo Miranda gives us a $5 tip. Is there a chance Conley stays? How much would we get back for him, and who would want him? Well, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday. I think we were told Dallas was very interested in Mike Conley. I think that you looked at a situation before the Cantavius Caldwell-Pope trade to Denver. I know that Washington had a lot of interest in Mike Conley. Danny could have done a Cantavius Caldwell-Pope trade and chose to wait. Obviously, he was working on a bigger deal with Rudy Gobert, so now that makes perfect sense.
Yep.
So I do think there's an appetite for Mike Conley out there, and it's going to be a team like the Lakers are going to have to make a deal, and they're going to need a point guard after they trade Russell Westbrook. Things like that, that's what facilitates a Mike Conley trade. What you get in return for him, that's a big question. I'm stunned that Brooklyn gave up a first-round pick for Royce O'Neal. Stunned. Are you getting a first-round pick for Mike Conley? Somehow I don't see that.
Yeah.
I don't see that. So the answer is I'm not really sure what his value is. I think I could see a first-round a second-round pick for Mike Conley. I can't believe somebody's giving you a first-round pick for him.
And if they keep him, I think you got to bring him off the bench at this point.
Yeah.
I think he's just not a starter anymore.
And I don't know that Mike wants that.
Yeah.
So I think both parties are better served by trading Mike, certainly.
Yeah.
Chris Okawa gives us a $10 tip. Good morning.
Thank you.
Thanks for a great show. Keep up the good work, guys. Appreciate you very much for that. Thank you. I just think it's one of those things where Mike Conley's an important part of that locker room. But I don't know that locker room chemistry thing is real right now. I think you're bringing in so much new talent and you're pulling out a guy like Rudy Gobert. The locker room dynamic's going to be different.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only guys that are really going to be around as far as like main contributors are going to be, guaranteed. I would feel comfortable saying that Jordan Clarkson is still going to be here. I mean, I think that he's too valuable to this club to ship him out, but I don't feel comfortable saying Bogey is still going to be here. I certainly don't feel comfortable saying Mike is still going to be here. I just think that there's too much value for those two guys, and I'm just telling you guys now, like, the Phoenix KD thing needs to play itself out so the Jazz know if they got that deal done, and then from there, you're, like you said, you're going to make your sculpting moves, and I think guys in those trades are Mike and Bogey, and you go from there.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that at all. I think it's one of those things where you have a situation in, here where you have a lot of flexibility. I think you're in a situation where you've made a transformative deal for Rudy Gobert, and now you're in a place where now you're in the driver's seat. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about this for a year and a half or 2 years now since they signed that Gobert contract, that the minute you move that off your books, you get a lot of leverage for that. And I think, again, the thing that really stands out to me is I see Danny Ainge here operating, and it's one of those things, folks, where I say to myself, my God, he's here operating.
It's a breath of fresh air, honestly.
It really is.
And I think your point about the locker room or like the team culture and chemistry not being here right now is spot on, because how could it be? I don't think that's an indictment on the team. I think it's part of the process. I think whether you subtract that many human beings out of a locker room,
like, what are you, 6 players off? I mean, if you look at Donovan, again, if you look at the guys that are no longer here, you're 4, 5, 6 guys.
Yeah, you're Gobert, Royce, Trent Forrest, Eric Paschall, Hernan Gomez. I mean, those are guys who were all, some were key contributors, obviously, others were role players, but all of them were in the locker room on a daily basis, coming to the office together. So that's why I say, like, I think that we had a couple comments earlier in the show about, hey, like, are they done? Is it a rebuild or a retool? Well, right now it's a rebuild. Well, I'm telling you it's a retool because there's no way that you can just sit here where you are. Yeah. You don't just make the Rudy trade to just sit here. There are more trades coming, and that's why I say definitively it is a retool.
And I want to go back to James Knight's comment. I only see Don leaving unless it's by his own doing based around lifestyle. Again, I think Donovan Mitchell likes wearing the note. I think he likes being a Utah Jazz man. I do think culturally and politically he's uncomfortable in Utah, as he should be. I mean, I think that's a real talking point. I mean, you look at what's going on in the world, and Utah's a different place to be. I mean, this is a New York kid that spends a lot of time in Connecticut and New York and Miami and Louisville we've seen the last few days, and I just think that there is a place for Donovan Mitchell in Utah, and I think he'd like to win here. Yeah. I do. I think Donovan Mitchell is a guy that's okay going to Louisville. I really do. I think he's comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Spencer Morgan on fire today, Spence. He says, I don't think I've ever said Donovan would hang with the Jazz through a rebuild. I don't think he would. Yeah, I don't think he would either.
But again, I just got to keep emphasizing this. Not that I'm saying that I disagree with you, certainly on any level, but I just think if you look at this logically, they're not going to trade Donovan Mitchell, because if that was going to happen, they would have traded him before they traded Rudy.
Yeah, because I think you get far more value for Don than you would have for Rudy.
Yeah,
I don't see a thing where they're trading both of them. I just,
that's the other thing that doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, I guess
I don't think so.
The only way it makes sense is if Danny Ainge was brought in here to tear it down and rebuild the team, which I don't think he was. Again, What has Ryan Smith said repeatedly? Not that he said much, but what has he said when he's spoken? He has said, hey, our goal is to win a championship, and I care a lot about the LHM legacy that they built, and in carrying that in good earnest and improving it and leaving this organization better than I found it. And I think that part of that process is not doing the 5, 7, 10-year, suckfest rebuild that is a lot of these organizations in the league. I mean, how pissed would you be as a Jazz fan if they were bad for 7 seasons, man? If you were a playoff team for the next 2 out of 7 seasons, that wouldn't be acceptable. The Utah Jazz can't do what the Houston Rockets have done or what the Magic did or what Oklahoma City's doing. That's not an option. And so that's why I say everyone's sitting here, the guys in Phoenix or in Brooklyn or whatever are all sitting here saying, oh, well, they're trading Donovan and this and this. If you live here and you follow this team, it does not make sense that they would trade Donovan on like any level. It just doesn't compute.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, I mean, if you listen to what Ryan Smith has said, Ryan Smith, though, I also think, by the way, Ryan Smith, for those of you not in Utah, is the owner of the Utah Jazz. And I think Ryan Smith has gone through kind of an evolution as an owner. I mean, I think part of buying a team, which he did 2 years ago as a young billionaire, is learning. And Ryan Smith made a lot of mistakes. I mean, whether it's the uniforms, I'm not trading Joe Ingles, whatever it might be. Ryan Smith has made a lot of mistakes. Hiring Danny Ainge was not one of them.
Yeah.
That was a really good move. And I think Ryan Smith also is learning, hey, man, I know what I don't know. And Danny Ainge is a guy that's done what I'm trying to do, so let me give him basketball operations. Let me make him my CEO. Let me have Danny Ainge go out. And as one of the commenters said last week, it's wild to see Danny Ainge operating unlike the Utah Jazz have ever operated.
Yeah.
And that's what Jake and I have talked so much about, because we're used to the NBA operating the way the NBA operates.
No emotions, numbers, like situations.
Jazz fans are so used to being tied to Karl Malone, John Stockton, Karl Malone, Ayton, all these
Joe
names
Ingles.
And these historic guys. And yeah, Joe Ingles. And hey, emotionally, I bought his jersey because he's got this great accent. And listen, I get that. But do you want the great accent or do you want the shiny trophy?
Right.
Because you don't get both generally. And trust me when I say this. And again, if you don't know me, my resume is I've covered this league for 30 years. I watched the Chicago Bulls win in a big way. I followed Phil Jackson to Los Angeles and watched him build a behemoth for the Lakers. Trust me when I tell you, this is how championships are won.
Y'all feel me?
Championships are not won currently in this league by drafting talent and waiting 5 years and hoping. Championships are not won by sitting Jared Butler on the bench and developing him into a starting point guard and waiting for him. Championships are won by cutting out the worst part of your roster, by getting your financial house in order and adding a player who can come in and help you get closer, not further, from a championship, regardless of what the fan base thinks. And I think one of the hardest things for Jazz fans to understand is you just don't matter when it comes to trades. And that's how you want it. You need to embrace that, because when you have owners that are involved who care about the bottom line instead of caring about wins and losses, that's when you struggle and you suffer.
Yes.
And when you're worried about what fans think, ultimately it leads to losses, not wins. And I think that's what Danny Ainge is acutely aware of. He's not here to win a popularity contest. He's here to win an NBA championship. And to me, that's how you win rings. You have to be unemotional. I think unemotional is the exact right way to say it.
Yeah.
Mesh says, I love Ayton move. My only concern with all these moves is we're making the Wolves better in Phoenix if they end up with KD, 2 teams in the West. Would we be better than either? Well, I also think that when you trade for a guy like Kevin Durant, your window becomes very small. And I look at Phoenix in particular, Mesh, because I think this is a really good point. I think Phoenix becomes instantly the number 1 in the NBA. I think when you put Book, CP3, and let's assume that that's how this trade would end up, that you would have a core of Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Chris Paul, right? If those 3 are together on the Phoenix Suns, they're winning a championship, in my opinion. The question is, What about the Utah Jazz? Well, where do they go with that against that little team, the Golden State Warriors?
Yeah.
Who are set up to win multiple championships for the next 3 years.
Yep.
Let's not worry about the Suns. I'd be more focused on Golden State. I'd be more focused on Denver, who I think got a hell of a lot better. I'd be more focused on just about everybody. By the way, Memphis is another year older. They're going to be better. The West is not getting easier. It's getting more difficult.
Yeah.
The Utah Jazz are a better team today than they have been at any time in the last 2 years.
And I think success over the next couple of years is getting to the Western Conference Finals.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And that's why I agree with you. Like, I don't think that if you're a Jazz fan, you shouldn't be worried about the Suns. Like, yeah, you're going to play the Suns, obviously, and those we'll love those matchups and everything. But as far as the postseason is concerned, you're not going to see them unless you get to the Western Conference Finals, because they're probably going to be a 1 or a 2 seed. And depending on how it all plays out, like again, if they make the Ayton deal, they kind of finish shaping up this roster, I would assume that the Jazz could contend for a 5 or a 6 seed. So if that's the case, you wouldn't even see the Suns until the Western Conference Finals. And if you got to the Western Conference Finals, you've improved. That was a successful season. So yeah. I just think that it's a win-win for the Jazz to do the Ayton deal and to take that next step forward, even if you do run into the Suns.
Yeah, and I want to go back to James Knight's comments. Joe Ingles' contribution to the Jazz is a little more significant than emotional fan favorite. Just saying, well, until he deteriorated rapidly last year and then ultimately wound up with a torn knee ligament, yeah, I would agree with you. I think Joe Ingles, how do I say this gently? Joe Ingles' value was his ability to make catch and shoot threes. He stopped doing that. He was no longer a defensive stopper. Those were his two highest, best uses on the floor. Off the floor, obviously, he was a glue guy. He was a leader. Yeah. He was a chemistry guy. He was somebody that could quell the loud voices in the room. That's what you missed from him. The issue was Joe Ingles was never going to be the guy that was going to win you a championship. He is a piece of a team that wins a championship. There's no doubt about that. Why did he go to Milwaukee? Because he wants a best shot at winning a ring.
Yep.
And he's earned that. And right now, that's not going to be in Utah. Even though, again, I think that this team is far better off today than at any point in the last 2 years. I think you are closer, and I know that sounds crazy, but the Utah Jazz today are closer to winning a championship than they've been at any point in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's because their financial house is far more in order. Their roster is going to be far more in order. It's going to be way more balanced, and you're going to be built around a prototypical NBA superstar instead of a guy that can't score.
Yeah.
And yet is taking 23% of your cap.
Yeah, the only other thing I'd say on the Joe Ingles front, and this kind of goes back to the emotional thing we were just talking about, like, I think for, Utah Jazz fans, like James Knight, who have clearly been watching the team for a really long time, like, you saw young Joe Ingles and the contributions and everything he was able to do early on in his Utah Jazz days, and you saw the deterioration. And that's why I say, like, it's not that we're saying that Joe Ingles didn't have value to this team, but I do think it's fair to say in a respectful way, hey, he just ran out of steam, man. That's why the ACL happened. You put that many minutes on a body, on a knee, like injuries happen, man. That's just part of life as a basketball player. So I just think that you can't be emotional about these guys who have been around for a long time. Like, you just need to say, hey, yeah, it's time.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with acknowledging the contributions that Joe Ingles made to this team.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Kurt, good morning to you. Kurt Valenti says, but does Donovan want to stay in Utah? Let's be real. Utah's not a contender at all with what they got, even Ayton. I totally disagree. I think let's have the conversation Utah's not a contender when we know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any doubt that this is far from a finished product. This roster is – you have no idea what this roster is going to look like in a month.
Yeah.
You have no idea what this roster is going to look like in 24 hours. I mean, to me, that you're a little jump in the gun here when you say that, this roster is not a contender. And by the way, the other thing I think is important is that we stop talking about if Donovan wants to be here, because he is here. And until he demands a trade, he's here.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many people that are sure that he wants out of Utah. He's done nothing to display that. And I can only say this so many times. Donovan Mitchell has done nothing to say, I want out of Utah. I hate playing in Utah. I don't want to be here. I love this idea that Donovan Mitchell is greedy and he's selfish and he wants to go to the Knicks to win a championship.
Yeah.
If you're greedy and selfish, are you demanding a trade to the Knicks? Because you're not winning a championship in New York in the next 5 years at this moment. You're not. You're closer to a championship in Utah than you are in a Knick uniform.
Agreed.
Right? So this idea that Donovan Mitchell is forcing his way out. Like,
congratulations, but that's bullshit.
You have no evidence of that. You have no evidence. And again, I can only tell you what people at the Jazz have told us. He's never, not once, not before, not currently, nothing. Donovan Mitchell's never demanded a trade from the Jazz. Never. He has never once said, I want out. What Donovan Mitchell has said, and we've been repeatedly able to confirm, I want to win a championship, and I want to do that as soon as possible.
That's every day.
He has told the Jazz, I'm not willing to sit here and go through you ripping this team down to the studs, because everybody keeps saying that. Donovan Mitchell has said, I don't want to be here with 4 other rookies on the floor. That's essentially what he said. The Rudy Gobert trade tells you that that's not what this team's doing, that they are committed to putting the assets and the money forward that they need to make sure that this team's competitive for a championship. And I'm telling you, if this next week to 10 days goes off the way I think it's going to, there's no reason this team can't win 3 rings in the next 5 years. And I think that starts next year. I don't think if Kevin Durant ends up in Phoenix, and I think he will, you're not going to compete with Phoenix or Golden State. You're not. The question is, what does Golden State do? Because I think that's huge. You're not going to be able to keep Clay and Wiggs, in my opinion. You're going to wind up trading one of the two. And if I had to guess right now today, I would still say they're going to trade Clay. But that's just my opinion. I think you're going to see over the next year that Golden State's going to change. Phoenix is going to change. Memphis is going to keep growing. Denver's going to keep growing. The Jazz are going to keep growing. And there's no reason to believe that Danny Ainge is going to falter or that he's not going to put this team in a very good position to win. So I think we need to stop with this assumption that Donovan doesn't want to be here, because there's no evidence of that whatsoever.
Yeah.
Thanks for getting me fired up, Kurt. I appreciate that. By the way, D's World of Hoops says agree 100%, Kurt. Kurt also says Golden State, the Suns, Memphis, Denver, Minnesota, the Lakers, Dallas, easily all better. The LA Lakers are not better than half of the league right now.
Yeah.
They're not. Listen.
Talk about a prove it deal.
The Suns right now are a bit dysfunctional. Without Deandre Ayton, they're going to have trouble scoring because he was a huge part of their offense. When a guy gives you 20 points a game, you don't just trade that guy away and think that Devin Booker is going to pick up and average 46 points a game, because he's not. Right? So, again, I think everything's in evolution. Everything's changing and evolving and growing. Let's see what the Suns are. Let's see what happens in Golden State. It's very difficult to play the volume of games that Golden State just played 3 years in a row. I think we've seen that. Why do you rarely see repeat champions anymore? Because you have the Euros, and you have the Olympics, and you have the Olympic qualifying, and you have the finals, and all the best players playing all those games. Like Luka Doncic. Big question about Luka right now. Luka's playing in Europe right now. He's playing in the Euros right now. And when that tournament kicks off in August, watch how many NBA superstars are in that tournament. Rudy Gobert's going to be in that tournament. You look at Luka Doncic is going to be in that tournament. Those guys are all putting mileage on the tires, man. Yep. And again, what have we said about Rudy Gobert? He's played in the Olympic qualifiers. He's played in the Olympic tournament. He's played in the playoffs. Now he's going to go play in the Euros.
Yep.
Some point, the wall's coming. And it's just a matter of how hard you hit the wall.
I.e. Joe Ingles.
I.e. Kobe Bryant. I.e. LeBron James.
Kevin Durant.
All these guys, eventually it catches up. You can't play all this basketball and think everything's going to be great.
Yep.
And I look at guys like Klay Thompson. I look at guys like Steph Curry. I look at LeBron James. I look at Donovan Mitchell. I look at all these guys who play all this basketball. Eventually, Father Time is going to win because he's undefeated.
Yep.
So all of this stuff, you got to go through this. I look at the Phoenix Suns are a perfect example of this. Kevin Durant has a recent history of missing significant time with injury. Chris Paul has a recent history of missing significant time with injury. Why did we tell you that Mike Conley was a massive mistake when you extended him? Because he has a recent history and a career-long history of missing significant time. You can't continue to pay guys and hitch your wagon to dudes that miss consistent amounts of playing time.
This is a code 10 abort.
Why did Klay Thompson struggle so much in the playoffs? Because he was tired.
Yeah.
Because all he's done for 2 years is rehab, right? So now I would expect this coming year, Klay Thompson to be Klay Thompson again, right? But look at Draymond Green. Draymond Green doesn't look like the same player he once was, does he? Because he's getting old. And I look at guys like Draymond Green, those are the glue guys. That's the reason that they're as good as they are.
Well, and I think when we talk about limiting factors, that will hold Golden State back on some level, like all the basketball they've played. And I think that, again, this is why I say, like, if the Jazz can get this right, they have a shot. And I don't think, again, respectfully, I just don't think it's fair to be writing them off already. Right now, as it sits today, yeah, all those teams are better than the Utah Jazz. But I just have to keep saying this, like, they're not done. They're clearly not done. It's not even in question.
Yep, I agree. Mr. East says Ayton and Anunoby in Utah would put the Jazz in a completely different path. Stronger team, and the Jazz can get them now. I don't know that you're going to be able to pry OG Anunoby away from Toronto for anything less than a superstar. I mean, I think Toronto really wanted Rudy Gobert. I think there is, and I know we talked about this ad nauseum, but Gary Trent and OG Anunoby, that package they were going to get from Toronto is not half of what they got from Minnesota.
Seriously.
I mean, the uproar and the Jazz fans that are upset about what the Jazz got from Minnesota, I just don't know what trade you're looking at.
Yeah. Because
with all due respect to Rudy's prowess at the rim, I mean, they absolutely got a haul. I mean, just in Kessler and Vanderbilt and those picks alone.
Yeah, Beverly.
I mean, and you look at, I think they're going to flip Pat Bev. That's just my opinion. But I look at, if you keep Malik Beasley on this team, you're fine. That's a guy who can start for you at the 3 or the 4. Like if Malik Beasley and Bojan Bogdanovic are on the floor together, Bojan's a better player.
Yeah.
And again, I'd love to see Bojan stay on this team. I don't know that that's going to happen. He's got value around the league.
Yeah.
I'd love to see Bojan be on this team. I'd love to see, frankly, if you can keep Vanderbilt, Beasley, and Bojan as 3 guys on this roster, you're in really good shape. Malik Beasley can play. That dude can play.
But I don't think a lot of people know that because he was in Minnesota. Like, how many times did you watch Malik Beasley last year?
Yeah, we watched a lot of Timberwolves. I have no life. My wife's probably got like 3 gigolo boyfriends because I just spend so much time watching basketball.
Gas, no break.
And my wife hates basketball. She is not a huge basketball fan.
Texas me.
Especially NBA. But anyway, let's get a couple other comments in here because there's one I want to talk to specifically. M. Alvarez says, hey, when you're winding down today, can I get 2 cents on the Utah Utes meeting with the Big 12 today? This is a huge story.
Yeah.
This is a huge story because, frankly, my weakest relationships are at the University of Utah. But it's interesting that the folks I know at BYU, they're pretty convinced that Utah is going to make a deal today to join the Big 12. Like, they are pretty convinced.
That would be fire.
They are convinced that Washington and Oregon are going to the Pac, or from the Pac-12 to the Big 10. And there's a lot of people who believe that Utah and Colorado are going to the Big 12 today.
I want the Holy War. I want it.
I want it every year. And if BYU and Utah wind up in the Big 12, how is Utah not instantly favored to be the Big 12 champion?
I want it.
That would be a killer addition.
Yes.
I don't happen to be a big fan of what they do in Boulder. That's just me. I hate Colorado, with all due respect. But my God, if you're the Big 12, how do you say no to that? I know the Big 12 wants the Arizona schools. I totally understand that. But right now, Colorado's in better shape than Arizona State. I think your mom's in better shape than Arizona State. But I got to tell you, Arizona's on the rise. What Fish has done down there and the recruiting, I don't know how many, you probably aren't paying attention. Arizona's not in bad shape. Arizona, since the Rich Rod, my kids are quarterback days, Arizona's gotten markedly better since they hired him as coach. And I'm telling you, Arizona is another one that belongs in the Big 12.
I just think for Utah, like, you are in a position where you got to maximize the time you have left with Kyle Whittingham, and I think that getting the Holy War back on the calendar every single year and just why wouldn't you? Like, my biggest thing here is this is the price the Pac-12 pays for being incredibly subpar the last 10 years. So,
the funny thing is, though, we sat in our vaunted pre-show meeting last night trying to figure out if we could talk football today, and we just haven't had time because there's been so much NBA.
Yeah.
But this Utah Big 12 thing is real.
Yeah, like football, like football season and all the things that go with it.
When you're here in BYU, and from what I understand, the Big 12 is vetting Utah heavily. The Big 12 would love to add Utah.
I'm sure.
And my guess is that that's going to happen because my friends in Provo are all asking, hey, like they're all being asked by the Big 12 conference, hey, do you guys want to do this? And the funny thing is, the Big 12 is asking BYU about Utah. And the irony of how much more leverage BYU has in college football today than Utah does.
Yeah.
The gutting of the Pac-12 has absolutely given rise to BYU's independence. And the decision that Tom Holmoe and the leadership at BYU made all those years ago to be independent absolutely looks like they did the right thing.
Yeah.
Because the one thing you can say about Utah, before we get back to the NBA real quick, and then we got to get to DeShaun Watson, and then we got to move. But anyway, the point is, there's two things you can't deny about the Pac-12. It cost you a ton of money. You lost money going to the Pac-12.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. At the time, you didn't think that would happen. But at the end, you lost money, and you lost Q factor, rating factor. You lost TV deals.
Facts.
You lost third-tier rights, social media, video.
You lost the talent on the football field because the Pac-12 is bad at footballing.
I agree. Larry Scott absolutely gutted the programs in that conference.
Yeah.
And as stunning as it was last week that UCLA and USC were able to turn that thing around in days, I think Utah's got to act quickly here. And I think A.D. Harlan is a guy that is going to do that. And he has, from what I understand, Mark Harlan has full ability to do whatever he thinks is right for Utah athletics.
Yeah.
He has the full backing of leadership at Utah. And I think they are going to meet today, and I think they are going to try and consummate a deal. They are going to plant the seed in your mom's garden, and they are going to germinate. And
drop that mother.
There's going to be a sweet new baby Ute in the Big 12. That was probably too far. See, what I meant to say, the copulation of contracts and...
What now? Let me tell you what now.
You know.
Sorry,
Okay.
Did you say copulation?
Of contracts.
Hey,
and
look here, man.
the constipation
And stuff.
and stuff. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Let's get back to basketball.
Right.
Jeremy Bolton, bringing in Ayton would be very reminiscent of good old Jazz days of Raul Lopez and Jaron. Did you just say Raul? Not Raul. Raul Lopez. Did you really just say that?
Bro,
You really? And
on.
Jaron Collins. You've mentioned Jaron Collins like 5 times in the last 3 shows. Settle down. Settle down. Jeremy, I have a vision of you wearing your Alex Caruso jersey right now. Your shoulders are very white. Jordan Nelson says Toronto thinks Anunoby is something way better than he actually is. I would love to have OG Anunoby on my team. That cat can play on the wing. Absolutely. Scammer trolling.
Scammer trolling.
Says, I have to admit, I started watching this show out of hate, but I'll be darned. You guys are actually quite entertaining. Thank you. Appreciate that, Scammer.
Add him to the list.
And by the way, my username is just simply a reference to me enjoying messaging with phone scammers. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I like that.
Okay.
Welcome to the show. James Knight says Jazz fans need to wait and see the impact of the Gobert trade will net when Ainge is done. Yes, I would agree with
Agreed.
that. Eric and Raleigh says football at 25. Exactly right.
Yes.
Noah Francis says, morning, brothers. What's up, Noah? Good to see you. Should we switch gears real quick? Because speaking of football at 25,
Yeah.
I do want to talk about this situation with DeShaun Watson.
Yeah.
So here's the very latest. DeShaun Watson, as you're well aware now, has been accused by 26 women of sexual misconduct, some far more than that, sexual assault. He has been sued by 24 of them, and he has settled 20 of those 24 suits. DeShaun Watson had his disciplinary hearing with the NFL and the arbiter.
The arbiter.
Last week.
Yeah.
The arbiter has requested that written briefs be submitted this week, and that before training camp it is agreed, it looks like, or understood, that this arbiter, which I think means she's a tree specialist. I could be wrong.
Right.
Arborist.
See what he did there? Arbiter, arborist.
Anyway, the tree specialist said that DeShaun Watson should have a decision before training camp opens.
Cold-blooded, clean, methodical, and thorough.
She said she is on her own timeline and that she is going to act by the process, not by any leverage or pressure from DeShaun's camp or the NFL.
Right.
Oh, by the way, Robert Kraft, speaking of copulation and germination, Robert Kraft got, by all accounts, a handy in a massage parlor in Florida a couple of years ago. And he was actually arrested, and they tried to prosecute him for sexual misconduct with a masseuse.
Right.
He faced no discipline. Now, we all understand that Robert Kraft is a billionaire white guy who owns an NFL team. And we all understand that DeShaun Watson has far fewer millions than he used to have, but he's a black man that plays for a billionaire white guy.
Right.
So we all know that DeShaun Watson's probably going to lose in this situation. Is there any correlation between Bobby Kraft's handy in Florida and what DeShaun Watson is accused of doing?
Yes, 100%. I think there's.
You think there is?
Yeah, I think
Wow.
there's an absolute connection, because I think if you really look at the X's and O's of this, and I would encourage you, go to ProFootballTalk.com. They've got a whole breakdown on it. Very easy to understand. This is not rocket science. This is all civil suit as far as DeShaun is concerned. And the issue is that there's no evidence that anything as far as like sexual assault or anything was done. There's no actual evidence. It's their word against DeShaun's word. So the problem for the NFL is that they have nothing to go on other than, hey, he violated the personal conduct policy, which this is the tie between him and Robert Kraft. They both violated the personal conduct policy. Kraft got no discipline, and because the cops couldn't check a box for a warrant, did not get prosecuted. And now you're in a situation where DeShaun is probably going to get a couple of games here just on merits alone.
See, this is the crux of the conversation, though.
Yeah.
Is it a couple of games or is it a year?
Well, the issue is that the league standards for sexual assault is 6 games. That's basically what the policy says. Like, anything related to sexual assault that you get disciplined for is 6 games. The problem is he's not being disciplined for anything around sexual assault. There's no evidence. There's no tangible thing.
The shocking thing is the National Football League put forward no evidence of guilt against DeShaun Watson in this disciplinary hearing.
Yeah.
It is remarkable. They essentially said, well, Madam Arbiter, you know that he was accused 26 times, sued 24 times, and settled 20 of them. That's all the evidence you need. All right, let's put him out of the game for a year. Like, that's essentially how the NFL presented their case, which is
crazy.
Ridiculous. But I don't see how you can take Bob Kraft and DeShaun Watson and compare them. Okay, there was a masseuse, there was a handy,
It's sexual in nature. That's the connection.
26 women have accused DeShaun Watson of, at minimum, sexual misconduct. Many of them say he sexually assaulted them. I think one of the 4 women that hasn't settled has made heinous accusations of sexual assault. I think this is a completely different case. I think this is a far more severe case. And if I were the NFL, I'd have handled this totally different. I would have gotten to a point when those 24 women filed suit, I would have suspended him for conduct detrimental to the National Football League, which they are well entitled to do. I would not have him at training camp. To me, the mistake that the NFL has made is allowing DeShaun Watson to put on an NFL helmet and practice jersey and be seen on television. He can never be seen in front of a camera in an NFL environment.
Yeah.
That's the mistake they made. I'd have taken him off the field. If they'd have had to pay him to do that, okay, maybe. But I would have suspended him without pay until further notice. Until this situation, which is at minimum, this is damaging to the National Football League.
Yes.
At most, he sexually assaulted 26 women.
Yeah.
You can't play in my league until we figure out what actually happened.
Never mind the ramifications for Baker Mayfield.
Oh, you settled out of court and there are no criminal trials? Okay, well, you brought great embarrassment to the National Football League. We'll see you next year. I'd have suspended him for the entire year. And if you want to appeal that to an arbitrator, okay, great. That's your right. Knock yourself out. But
agreed.
The NFL has taken no stand here. And you took no action against the billionaire white guy who got caught in a similar situation by the cops and was criminally charged.
Yes.
And only got off because some cop didn't check a box about video surveillance on a warrant.
Yeah.
And you took no action against him. That's kind of a bad look.
It's a bad look.
That is a very bad look. A very bad look, in my opinion. All right. Thank you for being here. Let's get some of your comments in here. I'm sure Jeremy Bolton says, I'd love to have Utah in the Big 12. Give me that rivalry all day long. Don't disagree. Yeah. He also says, I wear my Caruso jersey and nothing else while doing yard work. So here's my question. So the boys are swinging free in the breeze. So I'm hoping then that the Caruso jersey is like a dress, at least the length of a skirt.
Yeah, did you get a tall or did you just get a regular?
I said a skirt.
A skirt, right? That's a skirt, but like with the shorts built in.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's maybe it's a onesie Caruso jersey,
right,
with a skirt built into it,
right?
And just kind of scruff it and play with it when it's wet.
Because I don't think anybody wants to see your weed whacker, Jeremy Bolton. Hello, is it?
That's HIPAA.
Is this thing on?
Can we get some crickets in here or something?
Is this thing? Whoa, hey.
There we go.
Is this thing on? Hello? Oh, Jeremy Bolton's in his yard in only a Caruso jersey?
Just so you can go to Pound Town.
The neighbors are like, oh, God, call the cops.
Nice weed whacker.
Yeah, exactly right. Boy,
anyway,
how's he gonna edge the yard with that thing? Anyways, what? It's a legitimate, valid landscaping question that we are asking.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
So
okay, good talk. Good talk.
Right, it is National Workaholics Day.
Yep. Yes, it is.
Let's get into it. It is National Workaholics Day.
Yeah.
Are you, Jake, on board with a 4-day work week?
Hell yeah, I am. I think it's necessary. I think that it is, you don't lose productivity with a 4-day work week, and I think people stay fresher. And I think that if you're an employer, especially with how things are going now, like with work from home and everything happening, a 4-day work week to me makes a lot of sense. I would rather work 4 10s than 5 8s. I just would. I think I would rather have the extra day off to do whatever the hell I want to, and then be able to come back Monday nice and fresh. And I think that's just as simple as it is.
Damn
God
it.
damn it.
The bots are back in the channel.
See, you reference Bob Kraft, and this is what happens.
Well, you referenced DeShaun Watson, and all of a sudden, the bots show up, and they put out unwanted commercial content or spam. Actually, it's pornography or sexually explicit material. Let's go ahead and report them.
Yeah, thank you.
Dadgummit, and then we welcome... Oh, I was close! Mrs. Monty is on the show today. Let's tilt that down. Let's zoom in.
You got a mic as well. Her mic as well.
Hey!
Well, hey there.
There she is. Mrs. Monty, would you be in favor of a 4-day work week?
100%. I'm in. Let's do it.
Hundo P, bruh.
Yep. Yep.
Based on what do you say? Because I think the 4-day work week for me would just value our time a lot more.
Yeah.
And the hardest part for me right now is we just don't have time to do the things we want to do.
Yeah.
We have too much time to do the things we need to do. So my point is I want to be doing things that I want to do, not necessarily that I need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we work ourselves really hard. And I venture to guess that most people are already doing 4 10s. They're probably doing 5 10s. So I would say that if, if we can reduce that down to 4, it'll probably end up being 4/12s, but still I get an extra day on a weekend.
Well, Jake had some stats. I mean, there are a lot of countries that already do 4-day work weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you think about the countries doing that.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So you have a country, Belgium is the one who kind of started this whole sort of like flow as far as like what, doing a 4-day work week, getting ahead of that whole thing. But you've got countries like, Germany, the UK. We even have some countries here in the U.S. who are piloting 4-day work weeks.
Countries here in the U.S.
Or companies in the U.S.
Jake
Sorry.
needs more of that caffeine.
Yeah. Again, 4-day work weeks. Anyway, yeah, it's yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
So
the day after a long weekend.
It is, but we do have major companies piloting 4-day work weeks in the United States.
Yeah.
And I think when you look across Europe, certainly the Finns, the Swedes, the Germans, again, New Zealand's another one. Australia's another one. They're trying to get more quality of life at a higher level of production with their workers. And I think overwhelmingly studies have shown that when you work less, you're more productive. And when you work 4 days, if you work 10 4-hour or 4 10s, which is a standard in service industries and public servants, cops, firefighters, routinely work 4 10s. So you get more productivity. I'm all in favor of it because, again, anything that gives me more time for the things I want to do, I'm all in on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's interesting for the large corporation that I work for, we had an all hands call recently where someone asked the question, hey, are you willing to go to a 4-day work week? And essentially they said, just like the ability to work from home, they left it up to the directors of the teams to make the choice of what needed to be done in order to accomplish the work. So, for some teams, that's probably not going to work to have 4-day work weeks, but they did open it up for that. Is that really going to happen?
Probably not. Probably not. I mean, I will admittedly say I'm a workaholic.
Yeah.
I love what I do on this show. And I think most people here know that I work at Yelp full-time as well. Yelp is my job. This is my passion, right? So Yelp is I've worked at Yelp for the last almost 3 years.
3 years in October.
Yeah. And so for me, Yelp is the first job I've ever had outside of broadcasting on a full-time basis, like, hey, career job. And the issue obviously is the same issue that many people face. I make insane money at Yelp. Like, I make incredible money at Yelp. How do you walk away from that and do the things you want to do? Mm-hmm. Well, the way you do that is you bank your money and you work your side hustle and it's interesting that over the last 2.5 years, we've done several things in addition to working at Yelp because Yelp gives you incredible flexibility. Yelp gives you incredible benefits. Yelp gives you incredible money. Yelp enables you to do a lot of things like work remotely. Yelp,
especially when you're a top performer.
Yeah, and I think, Britt, your point, Mrs. Monty, your point about working remotely, Yelp is a company that has said we're closing our offices, our workforce. Because what Yelp did during the period of time that we're not allowed to talk about here on YouTube is they sent everybody home. Yeah. And they gave us all high-tech equipment to do our jobs and continue to make them billions. And then when the thing we can't talk about ended and they opened up the offices and gave people a choice, not many people went back to the office.
Yeah.
So now Yelp is saying, okay, well, you don't want to be here? We won't be here either. We're going to close our offices in certain cities.
And save ourselves a lot of money.
But it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And my point is that, like, you work for a tech company, we work for a tech company.
Yep.
Tech companies are quickly figuring out that employee happiness and allowing your employees to thrive, that's where you get the highest level of execution, in my opinion. I just don't think there's any doubt about it.
And I think that we're going to see that if we go into more of a recession, this is one of the levers that companies can pull easily. They can get rid of the building instead of getting rid of the people. It is a huge cost savings to cut that overhead for the physical building and then be able to keep people. I think we will see that happen a lot if, as we go into a recession, if that's what truly
well,
happens.
and I think when we talk about 4-day work weeks, I don't know anybody that would turn down a 4-day work week. I truly do not.
Well, and I think for those of us who side hustle as well, we're working like 8 days and 4 days. You're working you're working your 9 to 5, and you're like, we get up at like 4:15 every day. Like it's no joke.
Yeah.
And that's the tough part.
Yeah, let's get some comments in here. Eric and Raleigh says 0-day work week. Yes. James Knight says if you need to do stuff, you have to pull sickies. Okay. Sick days. Yeah. Casey Finlinson says, now when it comes to the 4-day work week, are you always a Monday or Friday off kind of guy, or on a rotating schedule where once a month you get a 4-day weekend? No, I'm a Monday through Thursday guy. Give me my Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yes.
Because I can drive to Denver and snowboard on that. I can build infrastructure. I can like all these other things with that extra day.
The consecutive days off is where the difference is.
Yeah.
I don't just need an extra day off. I want consecutive days off where I don't have to think about doing my job.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Eric and Raleigh says work 4 hours on Monday afternoon, leave work Friday at 1 o'clock. I already work. I am only allowed to work 40 hours, period.
Yeah.
So I usually work extra hours during the week, and then I wind up working a half day on Friday because I'm at 40 hours.
Yeah.
I want Friday off in its entirety, period. And whatever I got to do to get that, I'm in it.
The price of having the ability to not think about your job on any given day is huge. Like the benefits of that mentally are, you just can't put a price on it.
Yeah, totally agree. Zayman says best 4 days is Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday off. Work 2 days, get a day off. Work 2 days, get 2 days off.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we all have preferences.
Yeah. I don't know that. Yeah, that's interesting. Ooh, interesting in the NBA.
We have movement.
Free agent T.J. Warren has agreed to a deal with the Brooklyn Nets, according to Adrian Wojnarowski.
So that tells me a deal is coming.
That does tell me that a deal is coming, because the Nets have picked up a couple of interesting free agents. Something to keep your eye on. Absolutely something to keep your eye on. A couple more comments on this. Let's see. Ruff's official says the market should dictate everything. If you don't like your job, salary, schedule, work environment, you are free to get another one. Well, for every what is it? For every job opening,
for every one person, there's 5 job openings.
That's it. For every one applicant, there's like 5 job openings.
Mm-hmm. But Ruff, with all due respect, that's been your take on everything. Well, if you don't like it, you can get out. Okay, cool. I mean, that's just like I think there's more to the conversation than that.
I think we're looking for the perfect utopic work environment, and I don't know that exists. I mean,
work is work.
Yeah, you're always going to sacrifice on some level. I just think you are, no matter what you want to do. And I know this is going to be a tough topic. This Highland Park parade shooter yesterday. So that one hit very close to home. I lived in Highland Park for a long time. Jake was actually born in Highland Park Hospital. I'm at the end of my rope with this. I'm like in a shitty mood today because of this. Like I'm at the end of my rope with this, and I don't. You know what the problem is? I don't know what to do about it. I don't know what to do about it. And I'm at a point where we know who these guys are, right? We know who it's a 22-year-old white guy.
Add him to the list.
That's who these guys are. And if you didn't hear the details on this thing in Highland Park, there was a holiday parade in Highland Park, Illinois, which is not different than Kaysville. Layton, just a small town. And I mean, I went to that parade almost every year as a kid, and as a teenager, when I lived there, I went to that parade. Like that was down the street from where my apartment in Highland Park was. And the idea that we can't go out, sit on a curb in a lawn chair, like we're at the Murray 4th of July parade, without some guy climbing up a fire escape ladder with an assault rifle and just picking people out of the crowd randomly. He shot 6 adults and 20-something others were wounded.
Yeah.
And the picture everybody's showing is this woman with a bullet that bounced off the pavement and hit her in the face and just grazed her face. It cut her cheek open and she was bleeding, and she posted on social media that enough is enough. And it's like, man, I don't know what to do about this. I really don't. I'm frustrated. And I'm tired of, with all due respect, I'm tired of thoughts and prayers. Like, I'm tired of people saying, hey, thoughts and prayers and
moments of silence.
I'm tired. I'm tired of, and this is why when I say go and vote, I'm so proud of the state of Utah last week for putting Mike Lee in a situation where he's probably going to lose to Evan McMullen. Because Mike Lee is a huge advocate for the NRA. I'm tired of politicians saying, but you're coming to get our guns. And again, Marjorie Taylor Greene last week was asked point blank by MSNBC, you keep saying that we're coming to get your guns, or that laws are coming to get your guns, the Democrats are coming to get your guns. Where is one example of where somebody said, hey, we're going to go house to house and round up AR-15s? Where is that? Where's that one example of a legislative bill or a piece of legislation that was put forward at the state or federal level where it was said, hey, you got to turn your guns in? Where was that? I'm tired of this 22-year-old's dad, after the last mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas, saying he tweeted out, this kid's father, protect the Second Amendment with all of your abilities. And then less than a month later, your kid's on a rooftop murdering people. You know, like I'm tired of the division. I'm tired of the first thing we point out about this kid is that he's a Donald Trump supporter who is a QAnon follower, which he is, and he was. I'm tired of a black guy unarmed getting shot 66 times the other day. And this fucking asshole gets pulled over by the North Chicago police yesterday. And they asked him nicely, would you mind, they said to him. Could you please, they said to him. Like the people recording his arrest yesterday. You can hear the police on the loudspeaker being respectful of this guy. Yet we have a black guy that was unarmed, not a threat, got shot 66 times.
Yeah.
We don't want to talk about that, though. I'm fucking tired of it.
Yeah.
I'm over it. And we're not willing to do anything about it because we got to get reelected and we got to stay in power. And this guy's got money and Mike Lee's got this guy in his pocket and that guy in his pocket. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of talking about, hey, it's Donald Trump's fault. It's not Donald Trump's fault. It's your fault. It's his kid's parents' fault. I'm tired of common sense gun legislation. Shut up, Joe Biden, about your law that isn't going to change anything. This gun reform thing that went off a couple of weeks ago isn't stopping this 22-year-old from getting on a rooftop on the 4th of July and shooting people he's never met. A disabled guy in a wheelchair got shot yesterday. He got killed at a parade where he told his friends, I hate going to this parade, but I have to go because the people who are my caretakers, this guy in a wheelchair, legit story. This guy in a wheelchair yesterday at Highland Park, the parade, he gets killed by this asshole on a roof. Doesn't want to go to the parade. But he needs round-the-clock, 24-hour care. And the people who were caring for him said, well, we're going to the parade, so you're going with us. And he winds up getting killed by this lunatic on a roof.
Yeah.
That's where we are in this country. And nobody's willing to change it because we don't want to talk about it. We want to make sure that everybody's got their AR-15s. Stop selling the weapon. Stop selling these weapons of mass destruction. I'm not worried about nukes, bro. You know what I'm worried about? Going to the grocery store.
Yeah, they're not using handguns. Right.
I'm telling you, at some point we've got to get to a place where we don't talk about deer hunting with AR-15s. Because look, we don't deer hunt with AR-15s. And if you do, you're reckless. We don't need assault rifles. We don't need AK-47s.
Nope.
That's not that's not what it's about. We don't need, man, I'm telling you, what we did 2 weeks ago with common sense gun reform was not common sense. But you look at the leadership in this country, they can't get anything done because they're all on the opposite side, and this guy's going to vote this way. And, well, it's the midterms, so naturally if there's a Republican, the Democrats are going to win the House. And if there's a Democrat, the Republicans are going to win the House. Because that's just the way we do things in this country. Do you guys understand that we've just become the country that nobody wants to go to anymore because we just shoot people here?
Can't go to parades anymore.
We got cops on patrol in Philadelphia walking through a wooded area during their fireworks display getting ambushed and shot last night. We got cops going to a domestic disturbance, getting murdered with their canine dog last week. At what point do we say this isn't who we are?
And the argument of, well, if we all had our guns, we would have taken them out. It has never happened. It has never happened where other people pulled out their guns to shoot the shooter. That does not happen. It is a very poor idea. And it doesn't mean that you arm teachers because, look, it's never happened where the shooter gets shot by other people with guns. It doesn't work that way. So stop telling yourself that that's the solution, is to arm people more. Get rid of these weapons that do not need to be in our neighborhoods.
But if you look at the school shooting thing, you're exactly right. Like this idea, the funniest thing is that you have like Ted Cruz saying that in Uvalde, Texas, and you have Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, saying, well, we're just going to have a single entry in and out, and we're going to put armed guards there.
Idiotic.
Well, he showed up with an AR-15. And just don't even bring up what the police never did in Uvalde, please.
Never.
Just take it at face value. Okay, so we're going to have a single in and out with armed guards. But the shooter has a rifle that is designed to kill those guys before they ever even know he's there. And then when we go to evacuate the building, because I don't think it's a stretch to say, are you going to have 10 cops at the door? You're not.
No.
What are you going to have? One cop?
You're
going to
have a rent-a-cop at the door.
You might have one armed police officer. The likelihood is that you're going to have school personnel with a gun on her hip or his hip, and they're going to die. And then when the kids, when they hit the bell and they evacuate the building and the guy is standing at the one access point, what's going to happen to all the kids who are running at the access point?
I started having second thoughts.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then this idea that, well, if we'd have had people armed in the Buffalo grocery store, those black folks wouldn't have died. A state senator actually said that.
Or maybe he should.
Those black folks wouldn't have died. Why can't we just have the discussion here? Why can't we, without Kurt losing his mind saying that we need to stick to sports? Why can't we just have an open, honest discussion about where we are in this country? Because I can tell you, I'm 49, about to be 50. I've never felt more hopeless than I feel right now. I don't want to go to the movies. We went and saw Top Gun the other day, and it wasn't the thing I'm not allowed to talk about because there's been so many lies and half-truths about the thing that got everybody sick with your arm and stuff.
Right.
It vexes me.
That's not the first thing I thought of. You know the first thing I thought of? Well, it's a huge movie, and maybe we'll all get shot going to the theater. Because I'm telling you, this isn't a Chicago thing. All these assholes in Texas that were like, well, those are the black people shooting up Chicago.
No.
This was a 22-year-old white kid with an assault rifle on a rooftop at a parade. And by the way, thank God he lost his water. Did you guys see that? That homie freaked out, dropped his weapon, and took off running.
Like off the building?
Yes. He was on a rooftop, shooting down.
Right.
Panicked, dropped the weapon at his feet, and took off running.
Ah.
Got into a car and ran up to North Chicago, which is, if you're in downtown Salt Lake, imagine that you are in Bountiful.
Yeah.
He ran from that far, got spotted by the North Chicago police. A brief chase ensued. He stopped at an intersection and got out and surrendered because they asked nicely.
Yeah. Please and thank you.
Hey, buddy, think you
man.
could get out of the car?
Hey, bro,
so
can
nice.
you? Yeah. And like they were nice to him.
Hey, guys.
Anyway, my point is,
Yeah.
we just can't have a conversation. But I'm telling you, the one thing that I can control is voting. That's the one thing that I can do. And I get it. Mrs. Monty yelled at me the other day that I should write letters and
Do something.
I totally get it. Stop voting for Mike Lee. I'm begging you right now. You want to know what you can do here in Utah? You cannot vote for Mike Lee.
Yeah.
This is a guy who has routinely and at every chance he has gotten, Mike Lee has betrayed the United States of America, whether it was on January 6th, where he worked diligently behind the scenes to overthrow the vote. It's in text message, it's in writing.
There's evidence.
Whether it is his clandestine trips to Russia, whether it is his work with the NRA, he has never chosen us. He has always chosen them. And at some point, that's got to change. I'm voting for Evan McMullen. And it brings me great joy to see that he only got 41% of the Republican vote. That 60% of Republicans in the state of Utah did not vote for Mike Lee.
Mm-hmm.
That brings me great warmth to my
Yes.
heart because he's an asshole who does not care about you or your family and yet won't stand for questions. And dare he doesn't watch the show. Mike Lee, please join us. Come in and let's have a conversation. It is an open invitation. I've called his office a dozen times. He has never once called me back and doesn't want to because Mike Lee doesn't answer questions. So is what it is. All right. I feel better. Let's see. Scammer Trolling says, Kurt, the show is almost over. It's what they do at the end. A non-sports topic. Every day we do it.
Yeah. And by the way, I'll just get ahead of this and say, Kurt, if you don't like it, you can leave. We don't care.
And Kurt, before we all crush Kurt, he says, stick to sports, please. It's my only place I have to decompress from the madness.
Well,
I hear you, man. But
I get that. But again, you can't have. I'm sorry. I'm not here for. Oh, it's a sports show. You can't do lifestyle topics. This is this. We're all in this together. Like I just think it's just what it is.
It's uncomfortable, and it has to be uncomfortable until we can fix it.
yeah.
And that's what sucks. Our 4th of July got fucked up.
Yeah, it did.
Like, totally destroyed.
did.
As we sit in our homes and go, well, I guess it's probably not safe to go out. Probably not safe to go to a large event
And
anymore.
look at this nut at the hot dog eating contest.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. This guy
you can't even shove hot dogs down your throat.
This guy that runs up to Joey Chestnut with a sign in his hand, and Joey Chestnut said, I had no idea what he was doing there.
Yes,
where's your security? So Joey Chestnut puts the guy in a chokehold.
Dropped him.
And they wind up grabbing him.
Yeah.
Eric and Raleigh says, preach the good word, Tim. Thank you. Hodo Gonzalez says, well, it does happen. Giggity says, Mrs. Monty is spot on. Armed civilians will shoot other innocents because of no training.
Yes.
Exactly right. Giggity says, Cancun cruise. F that clown.
Yeah.
Yes. JJ Craigette says, preach. Ruff's official says there are mass murders in Philly, Chicago, Baltimore, D.C., New York, New Orleans, Oakland every day. Most of these states have strict gun control.
No, they don't.
No, they don't.
No one has strict gun
What does
Nobody
that look
has
like,
strict
dude?
gun control.
No one does.
What does that look like, man?
And this is the best part about the Chicago thing. Do you understand that in Chicago, gun violence is a daily way of life? And those guns, almost overwhelmingly, the guns the cops take off the street in Chicago are not from Chicago. They come in from Wisconsin and Indiana. Almost exclusively. They come in from out of state. So it's not that gun control in Chicago doesn't work. This is the abortion argument. Oh, it's banned in Alabama? Okay, well, I'll just go to Georgia. Or it's banned in Texas, I'll go to California or New York or wherever.
Yeah.
We need a comprehensive plan of attack where we stop selling these rifles, these assault weapons that are murdering our children. Man.
And they're just readily available. That's the problem. I'm somebody who says, hey, like, I'm not saying that we should just eradicate them from existence, but you can't just have any Joe Schmo going and getting them. Just like anything else, it has to be regulated. You have to fulfill criteria and get checked out and vetted. Like, there has to be a process, and that's the issue.
BB says, seriously, you liberals, I learned to accept your wrong opinions on politics. But the interesting thing is, and that may be tongue-in-cheek, I don't know, this isn't a liberal issue.
No.
This is an American issue. How long is it going to be before we have another mass shooting in Utah?
A day.
And that's we've had over 300 the first half of the year. We're
in
like 311 in this country. When it's coming. It's not a matter of if. It is coming.
Yes.
And the other thing that we got to stop doing is we have to stop publicizing these people. Like these mass shooters, it can't be a non-story. It needs to be not about them. It needs to be localized. I agree. There's a guy that said this many years ago in the UK, but we've got to stop talking about their names. We've got to stop talking about their families. We've got to stop talking about what how infamous they are now. Because that's what they want. This kid didn't kill himself. He wants to be a celebrity.
Yeah. Well,
it just is. It is what it is, man. I get it. Colby says, where do I find NCAA realignment talk? Well, we already did it. We did it during the sports segment. Ruff says the right to a gun is written in the Constitution. No, actually it's not. It's not written in the Constitution. The Second Amendment doesn't say that you can have AR-15s.
Right.
The Second Amendment says we have a right to bear arms to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government.
Right.
That's what the Second Amendment says.
Yes.
It's not, hey, you have a right to stand on a rooftop and murder people, and then you have the people that are survived have the right to watch you do nothing about that. That's not what the Second Amendment says. And at some point, we got to get away from this idea, well, the Constitution was written and it can never be changed. Fuck that.
It was written more than 200 years ago, and you know who wasn't in it?
Come on.
Women, people of color, and also probably you. Because you know what? You weren't rich. That is the honest truth. If you were an immigrant, which, well, guess what? Everyone was. It's a problem, and no one's willing to address it because they also follow a 2,000-year-old book.
Yes.
And it's time for change. It's time for reality, people. It's okay to say, hey, we started this way and it was really good. We now have to make changes.
It was necessary at that time.
In order to be better.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be better, you're just going to die the way that you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't explain it enough. Yes, we had a great intention in our country. Our Constitution was important. It was important when it happened. It was 200 years ago.
But this is what happened during the period of time that YouTube doesn't want us to talk about. Look at the high percentage of Americans who now have the thing in their arm where it prevents you from dying.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you think those people are just liberals? Do you think those people are only, the sheep? No, dude, they're not. It's liberals and conservatives and Democrats and Republicans and independents. Because the lies and the misinformation, how can you, the other question, we're out. Anyway, I could go on and on and on, man.
We need to have conversations about it, because when we can have conversations about it and we can work through the problem, we can come up with a solution. It can happen. But if we're not having the conversations and we're not being realistic, because when you just go back to no, because of the Constitution, you're blind.
Yeah.
You're blind. And you need to open your eyes and start having a conversation about what makes sense.
Yeah, I just think we need to stop. We just need to stop. I don't, and I totally agree. The Second Amendment says a well-regulated militia, and it is time for that regulation. It is absolutely time. And Ruff's, your opinion is welcome. He says arms. It doesn't say any type of arms. There's a process to change the Constitution. It's called amendments. With gerrymandering and district, mapping, we've lost the ability to do that. How did we end up with a Supreme Court that's completely imbalanced? Because we wouldn't vote. Like it's a lie. Like, come on, man. Like this is the problem. We won't be realistic about things. And until we are realistic about things, I don't know that we ever wind up in a better place. But speaking of which, a better place is we have to go to work. Show's over. I appreciate you guys letting me vent on that. It's not something we do every day. We generally stay away from politics on this show for this exact reason. So tomorrow we'll get much more into football depending on what happens in the NFL. Or, excuse me, in the NBA with the Kevin Durant situation. If the Jazz make another significant trade, we'll be live right back here on the channel. Appreciate everybody that's here. If you're here right now, please give us a thumbs up and a like. We really appreciate your patronage of the Monty Show. Until tomorrow, say goodbye, Jake.
Goodbye, Jake.